Okay, here's a ham radio quick tip. If you are involved with emergency communications or ARIES, you may want to use what's called a PowerPole connector for your power. Those PowerPole connectors consist of four pieces actually. The crimp on and solder on or solder on clips, as well as the outer housing. We're not going to get into the debate as to whether solder or crimp is better here. If you're out in the field and need a quick connection, then crimping may be an option for you. You'll want to pick up a crimping tool from West Mountain Radio. This particular one will work for the 15 amp, 30 amp, or 45 amp connectors, and has slots for each of those. So it definitely makes the job much quicker, and there are manual crimpers out there that you may wish to use. So we're going to install PowerPole connectors on this particular radio's cable, as that's the preferred connectivity for power in my station. The first thing we're going to do is make sure that we trim off any excess wires. So if I hold up the inside the metal clip, if I hold that up to the wire, you can see that this is about 2 times or about twice as long as we actually need it to be to fit inside of this connector or this crimper. So if I put that on, you see right there, it's just way too long. So we're going to do a measure once, cut twice, maybe. We'll do this a little bit long for both of them. We want to make sure that this butts up against the insulation of the wire so that there really is no gap there. I'm going to measure this, and I'm just going to put my thumb there so that I have a decent fit. You could also measure out the specific distance, and I'll post that in the chat, or I'll link to those instructions in the chat for that. So we'll just cut that off right there. Make sure that the strands are all together and put it on. And of course I didn't cut it quite small enough, so we're just going to clip a tiny bit off the ends, the tiny bit off the end here, so you don't have to re-strip or use the wire stripper. And you can see I did not get a decent cut there, so let's try again. There we go. We should retin these. That's probably the best way to go, so that you make sure you get all the strands in it. Again, if this is a quick field job that you really just need to get power poles on your station connector, then you're good to go. So we do that, and then we can put the casing in the crimper, and away we go. I just want to make sure that I have the cable correct here. I guess it really doesn't matter which way I have it. I'm going to do it with the end facing down. So what I'm doing is putting the clip part facing down so that it's in alignment with the fuse, the negative side of the fuse. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert this into the crimper. Kind of hard to see on the video, but I'm going to insert it into the crimper so that the clip is facing down. And I'm using the 30 amp connection here, so I'm going to use the 30 amp part of the crimper. Again, I'm going to push it in the crimper so that the tongue side is down, and then I'm just going to start ratcheting while making sure that my wire is in the crimper. And I'm going to ratchet it until it just isn't going to go anymore. And now I have a crimped Andersen PowerPole connector on my cable. So then I can also insert it into the housing. It's important that when you insert it into the housing that you you put your power poles on the correct orientation and the correct side. So the way that I always look at these things is negative on the left, positive on the right. This is just a cigarette lighter adapter that I've made for lower amperage or lower current situations. So when I put this into my housing, I want to make sure that the tongue, if you will, is facing down. Same way with this clip. So then you just push it into the housing, you'll hear a click, and it is secure. I'm going to do the same thing on the positive side now. I'm going to make sure that I only take off as much wire as I need to take off. You can also, after you trim these, do a solder. So solder, retin the end of the wire, and then actually solder that connection on. So you can actually solder this guy to the wire. I'm not going to go through that here. I'm sure that there's other videos that are much better at that than I am. Blind guy soldering necessarily isn't the best thing. But again, I'm going to orient my connection, or my tongue, if you will, on the clip so that it's facing down, kind of in line with my fuse holder. And then I'm going to put it in the crimper again using the 45 amp or the 30 amp connector. And then I'm going to start squeezing, making sure my wire stays in that connector. Now I have a fully crimped end, and I can do the same thing. I can put it into the clip or into the outer housing, push until I hear a clip, and it is solid. It's not going anywhere. Now to make it so it's usable for power, you just fit the two housings together. Again, making sure that you keep the correct orientation. So when I look at it from above, I make sure that my tongues are facing down and that the negative is always on the right or on the left. So then you can just slide them together like that and you're good to go. There is a piece of, there is a rod that you can put, or not a rod, but a locking connector that you can drop in between where the two connectors meet right here. Some folks use Q-tips. They'll force the Q-tip in there and then cut it off with a pair of side cutters. Others will actually use hot glue and fill that with hot glue to keep it from coming apart. And that is a quick tip on how you install a power pole connector.